Well, this is going to be short and sweet for me today for one good reason. A few days ago, I was in the Atlanta airport and had a yogurt parfait and for breakfast, and about 30 minutes later, I boarded Delta to go to, believe it or not, Rhode Island. I don't know why, but and I got about halfway through the first class and woke up in a first class seat, and a gentleman was patting me on the wrist and saying, "Are you okay? Are you okay?" And I had no idea what had happened, but apparently it was such a raging infection that I passed out quickly, and he just happened to be a doctor in Atlanta. And so they finally got the paramedics there and got me off the airplane, and so if anybody here needs a weight loss program, go to Atlanta and eat yogurt parfait. And do not eat at Fly Burger at the food court. Well, Dr. Welch and especially Beth Smith and her merry crew at the Alumni Association here for doing such an outstanding job all these years. I'd like to thank a couple of people for writing letters of recommendation, Governor Huckabee, Governor Hutchinson, and my good friend, Mayor Perry. Wrote the best one. Of course, I had to pay him a little money, but no, campaign, no. That's all a joke, folks. That's all a joke. I'd like to thank Lieutenant Colonel Clark, who I think just stepped down. Are you going out to Valley View? Yes. Meet the former superintendent of Valley View, my brother Bob Miller. If you need some expert advice, he'll give it to you. Marine, last duty assignment was at Millington Naval Air Station. He was a sergeant, and he was the brig warden. And as he said many times, I think in speeches or to just teachers and things, he said the best experience I ever had for being a superintendent at Valley View was the brig warden at Millington Naval Air Station. My older sister Betty's here. She's a farmer in Mississippi County. My sister Marcia lives in Virginia. My nephew Sergeant Matt Miller, and some guests here. I'd also like to, I know everybody knows about it probably in here, but I'd like to thank my old classmate for 4 years, basketball star, Buddy Beck, and his wife Charlotte founded the Beck Private Center for Wounded Veterans here at ASU, and I've become a part of it. Thank you. Well, as Colonel Clark said, everything seems to happen to be by accident. And when I was in ROTC, I joined the National Guard here to get a little check. Wasn't much, but it helped. And then when I went into advanced ROTC, you get another little check. So they discharged me from the Guard unit for that reason. And so my last semester here, last year, the Army came out with a program where they would teach you how to fly at your local area for your private license, and then that obligated you for 3 years of service instead of the normal 2 back then. So they had 11 slots, and Dean Ellis, I'm sure there are some people in here who remember who he is or was. He's a little bit up here, and we were a little bit down here because he talked in mathematics language that I had no idea what he was talking about. But anyway, he taught us what we needed to know in order to take the exam to be one of the 11 people that got their license here, and I got the 11th slot. And so when I went into the service, I had a 3-year obligation, and I went to helicopter school first, and then later on I went to multi-engine flight training, et cetera. But it was, I'm sure, looking back on it, that's what caused me to stay in for 20 years, because flying helicopters are so much fun. And I'll tell you one quick, interesting story. When Ole Miss was integrated, we had to bring 7 of our big helicopters from Fort Benning over to Millington Naval Air Station, and we transported border agents, et cetera, and then later on MPs types over. And we had a break one weekend, and I asked my buddy, I said, let's go over around where I was born and raised, which is Mississippi County, West Ridge. Anybody heard of that? Etowah? So he said, sure. So we took off. Back then, you could, in the military, you could fly wherever you wanted to. You know, it wasn't training missions all the time. So I headed out to our small cotton farm there, and I looked up, and Betty's husband, Hoss, was on a combine heading in, fortunately, away from me. And I dropped down to a low hover and eased up behind him. And those Sikorsky helicopters, those big ones, I mean, it looked like tornadoes out the side. And he was sitting up there doing, thinking about all kinds of things, I'm sure, hunting probably. And all of a sudden, he sees this tornado on the right, a tornado on the left, and he looked back, and there I'm sitting doing this. And thank God he didn't jump off of it. And then the other time, I flew a Baron, which is my favorite Beechcraft, home, and we had lunch with my brother Bob and my mom. Well, I had a great career. I loved it, and had a chance to spend a lot of it in foreign countries. Some of the not so great times of Vietnam, but in reality, it wasn't that bad. We always had because we flew helicopters, we always had to have a maintenance bin, barn. We had to have some place to come back to, and we wasn't quite like the Air Force, but our biggest joke about the Air Force is when they went into Vietnam, the first thing they did is build the Officers Club, and then they built the BOQs and the swimming pools. And if they had any money left over, they built the airstrip. Right, buddy? Well, I've had everything that's happened to me in life has happened because of ASU. And I just want to let everybody know that. I have written a book. My publisher says never miss an opportunity to hawk your book. And it's basically, the reason I wrote it is, and I mentioned it a little bit a few minutes ago, when they had the 5-day national tribute to Vietnam veterans and the dedication of the memorial, I watched it, and I decided I'd do something. And I was in Atlanta, Delta Airlines, right? Get in the car, drove out, and put on the best tie and suit I had, and walked into Delta Airlines unannounced, a cold call, and asked for the charter director. Never will forget his name, Mr. Huckabee also. And I walked in and I said, I told him about the 5-day national tribute, and I would like to see if I could lease an L-1011, which carries 300 people. And he looked at me, and I could see the wheels spinning. He was saying, who in the world is this? And he said, you mean you want to lease it? And I said, yeah. He said, well, you got to do a lot of things. You got to, first of all, you got to be a nonprofit. And secondly, you got to pay up front, which I should have asked him then how much the lease was, but I forgot about it. And so, in other words, he didn't turn me down, so I went out and got in the car and went home and started calling. All the Vietnam veterans and family members that I called wanted to go, and so I knew I could probably fill the aircraft, 300. But how do we pay for it? So fortunately, my older sister married a banker in Houston, and I called him and I said, hey, Billy, need a favor. And he said, what? And I said, I need you to guarantee a payment. And he said, okay, whatever. Probably thought $300 or $400, I said, it's only $42,500. And he went, okay, what's the joke? So anyway, to make a long story short, I ended up, after about 3 or 4 weeks of working the phones and the corporations, Lockheed had a big plant there, and and the city helped quite a bit. I ended up taking 300 Vietnam veterans and a few family members to the dedication. And as a result of that, I was asked by the Reagan administration to form a veterans nonprofit organization for the state of Georgia. And they called me and asked me, and I thought they meant like a GS2 or 3 or something like that. I didn't know what it was, but I knew I didn't want to get back into government again. And so I told them I didn't want to do it, but I'll find somebody for you. And they agreed, so I headed Aspen to the slopes, and I called a few people, and they liked the concept. And the concept was, it was formed in the federal government under the volunteer agency called Action, which at the time had the Peace Corps, foster grandparents, et cetera, et cetera. And the more they told me about it, the more I was intrigued with it, because actually you form your board of directors, you apply for grants or whatever money you can get from the state or something, and it was nonprofit, and I liked that. And so I ended up taking it, and I ended up doing that for 13 years, and it was an unbelievably successful program. And we had one in every state. And Arkansas had a great program. And a good friend of mine ran it, and he ended up in the later years working for Congressman Ross. And he was a disabled vet, one leg missing, and did a super job here. Don Grigg, I don't know if anybody here ever ran across him. But he was a super nice man. Well, I guess that's about all I have to say. And since there are no questions, I want to emphasize what Buddy Beck's done. And Charlotte, stand up. Where's Dr. Hanrahan? Where's Dr. Hanrahan, the boss that makes the trains run? That's the reason it's successful right there. So thank you very much. Thank you.